Hey, how's it going, everybody? Max with BuzzTox here, and I'm back with an episode 4 preview. Based on the episode title, the synopsis, and the episode trailer, I'm going to break down what I think we're going to see of Season 7, Episode 4 of Game of Thrones. But before I get into it, I just want to address the leaked script, and a part of that leak was the script for the next episode of Game of Thrones. I was about to click it and read it, but I decided not to, because I don't want to spoil myself any more than I already am, and I really want to enjoy the next episode for what it is. And this show already has proven to me that it's moving in a different direction than what I originally thought. And this is somewhat worrisome, but at the same time I'm excited because we may see some things that I'm not expecting. But moving on to the episode, this episode is called The Spoils of War. And to break down what that means, is it pretty much means that any profits extracted as a result of winning a war, or any other military activity. And this sums up exactly what we're expecting. Jaime is in Highgarden, he's extracting resources, gold and food and all of these different assets from Highgarden, and he's shipping them to King's Landing so Cersei can pay back the Iron Bank, as well as keep her military force strong. And we know that this resource extraction is going to get caught by Daenerys and her Dothraki army. So that raises the question on who will get these resources. Will they finally make their way to King's Landing, or will Daenerys stop them? Will she claim these resources for her own? Or will she throw aside strategy altogether and burn everything? Because right now she's in a very difficult position because she's losing to Cersei at every point of contention. And the synopsis for this episode reflects the title. The synopsis states that Daenerys fights back, Jaime faces an unexpected situation, and Arya comes home. And I think this upcoming episode will lead to the conclusion that Daenerys needs to fight back. And Daenerys wants to fight her own way. She doesn't want to fight in the diplomatic way that Tyrion has been counseling, because it hasn't worked out for her so far. So Daenerys is going to fight back the only way that she knows how, and that's using her dragons. And because of this, Jaime's going to face an unexpected situation, which will lead to a huge fight on the road to King's Landing. And then we will see Arya come home, and hopefully we get a good scene between all of the Stark children, and it's not brushed over like the last scene we got with Sansa and Bran. But in this preview, we're seeing that Daenerys is truly getting desperate. She thought it would be easy for her to come to Westeros and claim her seat to the throne. But because of her diplomatic approach, she's losing at every single turn, and because of this, she's taking it out on Tyrion. She says in the preview, enough of the clever plans, and I believe that she's talking directly to Tyrion. And she says that she is losing this war, and she's talking directly to Jon. And it's here where I believe that she is going to ask his opinion on what she should do. And this is going to be the next step of their relationship. And I believe that this episode is really going to show a new aspect of Jon and Daenerys' relationship, because they did start off on the wrong foot. Daenerys wanted Jon to bend the knee, and because of that she was trying to be the alpha, the dominant one in the conversation. And Jon never backed down, and it led the two to feel kind of a mutual disrespect for each other. But I believe Daenerys is on the journey of being humbled. We've seen her conquer everything that's been in her path. And in the last episode, she spoke to Jon that she's the unburnt, she's the mother of dragons, she's the breaker of chains. All of these titles, and she has faith in herself. And that's how she got where she is today. But now her army's been beaten, and I think she's starting to believe that she's not as untouchable as she thinks she is. And on top of that, since Jon is in her vicinity, I think she's going to start to discover that Jon could be equally as important as she is. And I think that could result in a huge strain on her character. And she says all of these things to Jon. She's the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, even though Jon is the son of Rhaegar, and he could potentially have a better claim than she does. She says that she is the mother of dragons, and we will see how she feels when Jon himself can get on one of her dragons and tame them. She says that she's the breaker of chains, where Jon broke barriers for the wildlings. He allowed them to come south. She calls herself the unburnt. She can't be burned by fire, whereas Jon is the undead. He was resurrected from the other side. And she claims that she is the last Targaryen, whereas Jon is the hidden Targaryen that nobody knows about. And in this season, I believe we're going to see a huge distinction between their leadership styles. Like in the earlier seasons when she was dealing with slavery and Meereen, she took the side of the slaves, which is a necessary thing to do. But she did not take the diplomatic approach, and she hung all the slavers on spikes. Whereas Jon didn't take a side between the wildlings and the Night's Watch. He tried to understand the wildlings' point of view, and tried to bridge the gap between two sides. And that's what Jon is as a person. He is the connection between ice and fire. And I believe that these similarities and distinctions between these two characters is going to have a huge effect on the story going forward. But I believe while Daenerys is complaining about not having any more allies, Theon will arrive at Dragonstone and give a glimpse of hope of the future. And he will give Daenerys a report stating that Yara indeed was captured, Ellaria and Tyene were captured, whereas the remaining are dead. And I think it's going to be here where Daenerys is going to try and encourage Theon to take the leadership role. And that's going to be his arc moving forward. Because I believe that Theon has truly paid the iron price. And he is the shining example of what it takes to be Ironborn. And I believe that during this interaction, Theon and Jon will reunite. Jon will yell at him because of what he did in Winterfell, pretty much tearing their family apart, resulting in Robb's loss of the war. But the reason that Jon will spare him is because he saved Sansa. But moving on from that scene, we also see Jon, Daenerys, and Missandei go into the caves of Dragonstone. We see Jon lighting a torch and leading Daenerys into the caves. The primary thing I pull from this is that they're not going to dedicate a scene to Jon and Daenerys in the caves under Dragonstone if it didn't have any significance. We know that there is dragonglass in those caves, so there has to be something else to make Jon want to grab Daenerys and bring her in the caves, as well as show the audience that is watching. So I believe that there is huge points of speculation. Maybe they find a weapon or some kind of object in the caves, or maybe they find some historical references. It can be assumed that these caves were used to mine dragonglass in the last Long Night, so there could be some historical references, whether it is a painting or it's an object that Jon can show Daenerys to almost prove his point that the Night King is real and they're marching for the wall. But one scene that we've seen in the trailers but haven't seen in the episode so far is Tyrion standing on the cliffs watching Daenerys' dragons fly, and he does look somewhat worried and upset. And I believe this is the same location where we saw Tyrion and Jon brooding about their situation, and I believe that Tyrion will return to this spot because he just heard news that Casterly Rock didn't go as planned and their whole fleet has been destroyed by Euron Greyjoy, and I believe he will go there to mull things over. And while he's doing that, Daenerys will fly by on Drogon with her 2 dragons following her, and she will arrive next to Tyrion to a Drogon that shows his teeth, and it's a point of aggression because Daenerys has put so much into Tyrion, but she's reaping no rewards because of this diplomatic approach. And it's here where I think she's going to tell Tyrion that she's going to go straight to Highgarden and burn all of them alive, because she needs to get the upper hand of this war. So it will be interesting to me if Daenerys takes just Drogon alone to Highgarden, or she takes Viserion and Rhaegal also. But on the other side of that war, we see Cersei talking to Tycho Nestoris, and she's telling him that she wants to establish control of all of Westeros. And Tycho Nestoris pretty much tells her that she can count on the Iron Bank as long as they get their gold. And I believe that that's going to be an answered question in this episode. Will Jaime be able to get that gold? Because Daenerys is going to be arriving with her dragons, or just Drogon, and she's going to be burning all of those resources. So it's a question as to whether Daenerys gets those resources or she burns them all in her recklessness. And that raises the question, what will happen if the Iron Bank does not get their money? I think it would make sense for Tycho Nestoris to leave on civil terms, because he's not a fighter. He's going to head home to the Iron Bank, but I think this would be the perfect opportunity to bring in the Faceless Men. If Tycho Nestoris feels like he's getting no profits or can't reap any gain from Cersei Lannister and her being in power, it would make sense for him to take the last measure, approach a Faceless Man in the House of Black and White, which I hope would be Jack and Agar, and only say one name, Cersei Lannister, and pay the gold and have her immediately assassinated to put a new person in the seat of power. But we will see what happens in this fight. Jaime is currently getting all the gold ready and the resources, and they're shipping them to King's Landing. And this is where he gets his unexpected surprise, which is Daenerys arriving on the back of Drogon with a fleet of Dothraki. I'm unsure if the Unsullied are going to participate in this fight. They've been left at Casterly Rock and they have to leave and march all the way to Dragonstone. In the trailer, it looks like they're a part of the fight, but it could be fancy editing. But in this fight, they're going to address a couple issues that I believe they've been putting throughout this season. First of all is the crossbow that Qyburn made to kill dragons. That's going to be a weapon that's definitely going to be used in this fight scene. I just don't know how far they're going to want to go with it. I seriously doubt Daenerys will lose a dragon in this episode, but it would make sense to have one of her dragons injured as a result of this weapon. It would make Daenerys realize that she has to be more careful, and that's what her council warned her. In the last episode, they didn't want Daenerys going out and burning Euron's fleet because she's just a person. All it takes is one arrow. And that's what they said. Daenerys is in serious danger in this situation, and she's never felt like she is, but because of these crossbows, I feel like Daenerys' life could potentially be threatened. But while this is happening, we're going to get a lot of scenes in Winterfell. A really interesting shot is we finally see Cat's Paw, the weapon that was used to try and assassinate Bran in the first season of Game of Thrones. And we see Littlefinger pull out the blade, and he reveals the Valyrian steel blade. And I believe that this is not Littlefinger's way. Littlefinger is not the aggressor. He's the manipulator. He's the political mind. Littlefinger would never attack somebody. So I believe he is using this as a chip to get him where he wants to be, or a gift. We know that Bran has arrived at Winterfell, and Littlefinger has no idea that Bran has absolutely no intention of being king in the north. So I believe we're going to see Littlefinger try and get on Bran's good side, just as he did Sansa. Because right now, the Starks are all that he has left, and he needs to make sure that he is on good terms with them. And that's a huge advantage, because right now, Bran and Sansa are not necessarily connecting. So if Littlefinger can swoop in and try and build that relationship, in his mind, he would have a guarantee of staying relevant. But moving on in Winterfell, we also see Brienne kind of striking Pod on the ground. It's unfortunate because Brienne and Pod have nothing to do in this season. I think that this scene is just going to be the start, or the introduction to a scene between two more characters who share a more important story in this season. And that person could potentially be Arya, because we see her looking at Winterfell from a distance. And I believe that this is the episode where she arrives. And the interaction is going to be crazy, but hopefully it's better than the interaction we got with Sansa and Bran.
And you were so beautiful. In your white wedding dress.
But right now, we're going to have three totally different Stark characters that have changed so much. Bran is almost not even human anymore because he's the Three-Eyed Raven. Arya has turned into a ruthless assassin, which she might have changed a little bit from her journey back home to Winterfell, but we will see. So it will be interesting to see if Sansa and Arya connect on a level that is deeper than Sansa and Bran. I would love to see that work out. But also we see Sansa sitting down with a bunch of paper in front of her. I think this could be multiple things. First of all, it could be her during her research on the long night. What's the longest winter in the last 100 years? And doing research so she knows what to do moving forward. It could also be just her headquarters and she's sitting down to write a raven to Jon, notifying him of maybe Arya and Bran's arrival. But that is all that I have to say about Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 4. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And just so you guys know, I got my live stream tonight at 8:30. Don't miss it. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.